We came to Dubai today to take a train ride into the future, and not on an express train, but on a hyperlooper. It's hard to imagine that in the 90s it was still a desert, but now it's an oasis with the tallest skyscrapers in the world. We will talk about how Dubai is rushing into the high-tech era, developing technologies such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, robotics, and of course, renewable energy. In general, the main task of Dubai and the Arab world as a whole is to move into a post-oil economy, and the city itself plans to switch to 75% renewable energy resources by 2050. We'll tell you about all of this in our issue. So, subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. Let's go!
Dubai leads the world in foreign direct investment in the artificial intelligence and robotics sector. Here too, conditions are being created to test concepts in real life, including hyperloop technology and flying manned transportation. The pace of innovation is increasing in fast-growing sectors such as mobility, healthcare, 3D printing, and of course, artificial intelligence. Forward-looking, Emirates is creating an ecosystem for innovation and business models of the future. The city can boast a thriving community of startup incubators and accelerators. Alternative sources of energy can be the sun, the ocean, or the wind. And the latter is available day and night everywhere on the planet. That's why today we came to visit a startup company called WETER. Dennis, as the founder of the project, can you tell us what makes your idea unique? Because it seems like similar projects already exist or already built.
Probably not a unique technology, but a useful one. If we talk about distinct features, there are a number of such features. You could say that we now control the wind. Why can we afford it? Well, first of all, we can increase its speed, the Venturi tube effect. Yes, we can change the direction of that wind. That's very important too, because we can now leverage it. That also increases efficiency, and plus we can take air currents from any height. That is, if today's modern wind farms with a horizontal axis as a rule have a height of 120 meters, then for us it's not a problem, and 200 or 300 or 400.
It turns out that the higher up, the stronger the wind.
And it's more stable, yes, and usually stronger.
And as I understand it, in terms of sound, will people who live or work in such buildings be comfortable?
Discomfort I totally exclude. You know, I think Soviet scientists might well have come up with this idea. But back then, in the dawn of Soviet science and technology in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they got carried away with nuclear power. Well, it's fascinating, of course, when a matchbox can replace an entire rail car of coal. And so projects such as wind power or solar power, they were not given the attention they deserved. There's a newsreel called I Want to Know Everything, you know, where they show an experiment that the vertical axis is more efficient.
The wind power of electric power plants is not great yet. They need strong, consistent airflow. And even then, you have to trim the sails to the wind all the time. This was the case until scientists found a completely new principle of operation. It turns out that the axis of rotation should not be horizontal as before, but vertical. And instead of blades, there are special shaped wings. Here, for example, is a design that looks more like a merry-go-round than a propeller. Let's make a simple experiment. We turn on a fan, 2 ordinary wind turbines spin, and 2 stand still. The merry-go-round works. The wind has changed, the windmills have switched roles, and the merry-go-round works. Whenever the wind changes, it rotates faster than an ordinary propeller and always in the same direction.
And it says that we don't know yet what these wind farms of the future will look like, but we hope that our findings will allow future generations to come up with new, better solutions.
You could say that you're the kind of person who continues these ideas that originated back in Soviet times.
Well, after watching a video like this, it turns out that yes. So this idea is how we got started. There was a dissatisfaction with modern cities, where in order to achieve simple goals, you have to make a lot of movements, especially if they are regions with some kind of sharply continental climate. For example, in my hometown, it can be minus 40 degrees Celsius there, and in order to take the children to the kindergarten, which is 800 meters away, you have to do a lot of gestures. That is, warm up the car, park it.
People in the north don't even turn off the car.
Yes, they don't even turn it off. All these inconveniences led to the idea of how it could be different if you criticize, suggest something. Here, we have two projects presented. This is the GOROD L.E.S. and the WETER. Buildings are integrated into this city. They work in synergy together, but normal buildings can be used instead of WETER building. The first level is exactly your theme. Robotics, minimal human labor involvement. In other words, of all our production, it's like a single conveyor from raw materials to the finished product.
So you have 4 levels.
4 levels, yes, and a 4th is open.
In the first level, is that just manufacturing, high-tech manufacturing with practically no people?
Any kind of manufacturing could be food, light industry, assembly of some cars, basically. What is most important to understand is that all levels are above ground, because underground construction work is more expensive. The second level includes various communications. This includes electrification, water and wastewater, and air conditioning. And most importantly, they can be easily serviced. That is, to go down in an elevator, find a problem on a sensor of some kind.
Would the Internet of Things also be relevant here?
Yes, so in general, it's kind of a platform like, say, iOS or Android, into which you can introduce an app or their innovations. So it's a platform for innovation. On its own, it's kind of empty, just like the phone, and these levels, work with each other as effectively as possible. The third level we have, so let's think of it as a shopping mall. There's commerce, medicine, and administrative function, and the cultural function.
Or an office.
Well, or the office, yes. The 4th level is us transferring the fertile layer of the earth. What we took from nature, we gave to it. Here you can say, sitting on the bench, or control a robot or a CNC program on the 1st level.
It's just a dream to sit in the forest and manage manufacturing.
It's also a safe environment. That is, human traffic does not face the car.
And where do the cars go?
Cars can drive through the 1st level as if in transit, or they can park here. In principle, they are not needed here, because any function that a person needs, it will arrive in 3 minutes. That is, an ambulance, for example, or a person from the top of the building comes down to work. And that's it, he's already here. That is a redirection in time cost, a reduction in the speed of delivery. Also, suppose there is a raw material, there's a production section. The distance between them is minimal. Both businesses and production will all benefit here. It will have higher efficiency than in regular cities and will be cheaper. Using such technology, we get a number of advantages. For example, there are no anthropogenic man-made sounds. These are the same ones that do not allow our nervous system to relax. Noise in modern cities is over 80 decibels. That is, when we sleep, our bodies cannot even breathe out because we still hear all these mechanisms and so on. In this city here, there will be complete silence, only birdsong. By using this system and grading the upper levels as much as possible, we get a reduction in air temperature. Will Dubai be able to give this up when it understands this? It's also, in the winter, actually works as an insulator. It's a single complex. Like a glove, for example, it's colder than a mitten. The glove is separate buildings, in fact, and this is the mitten with a single complex. So the energy efficiency is higher, And on top of that, the top of the temperature, Dubai uses a lot of water to water the plants. And most of the water evaporates. Here, we have communications, and you can irrigate from below, through the soil, and then there will be minimal evaporation, minimal water consumption. We have a mock-up ready, where we have integrated this technology specifically in Dubai. We will present it at WETER 2022, which is at the end of September or beginning of October this year. And our goal is to bring the main people of Dubai to this mock-up and tell them about all the benefits.
If I understand correctly, is this construction modular?
That's right, it's kind of a hexagonal cell, like a quarter. They can be with some kind of bias. For example, one is more developed in some sports function, the second is more industrial. And they can develop, let's say, on the periphery of some city and grow further. That is, if we add a hexagon here, we can move the facade, the glazing, to the next one. And here we have a reinforced concrete ceiling, reinforced concrete columns and partitions, and they can be rearranged in space. So we don't build something in such a way that it's static. You either demolish it or change its functionality in a hard way. Here it's quick, mobile partitions, there's plasterboards and glass. And the space can expand and contract, it's like a whole system.
And what about in terms of obsolescence of cells? That is, you put in a few cells, then in 10 to 15 years they added even newer cells with new technologies. What to do with the upgrade of the old cells?
The cells are essentially just a frame, filling the sensors or changing the software. It's not a physical thing. There's nothing complicated here. Just like when we get a new firmware on our phones, the content changes. That's how space is rebuilt. We can change or add something on the fly.
So it's easy enough to upgrade the technology in the system?
Yes, because it works as a single organism. So after it becomes clear that it was necessary to implement modern cities in several levels, the question arose, what kind of buildings should be?
Immediately visible in terms of the project's benefits is design, beautiful design. As we know, design is selling, both to investors and customers. How do you feel about design in general? Did you make it yourself? And what place does it occupy in your project?
As for selling or not selling, we did not think about it. The first was just experimentation. I did my dissertation in bionics and architecture, that is, some kind of natural motifs. At the time, what was in my head was what I used. But in the beginning, there were technical conditions, such as the rotor had to be like that. In general, to observe some kind of aerodynamics. Dennis drew me all of this on a napkin when we first met.
Sounds like a typical startup.
Yes. That's it. It all started with simple things, and we began to try things. This is about the third version, but we think it's the most beautiful. It kind of seems like a complicated shape, but it doesn't have to be. There was a funny story about how, without offending the Burj Khalifa skyscraper, it had to be done on a similar level and in 10 days. If I didn't meet the deadline, then some amount was taken away. I screwed up for 2 days, but because I exceeded expectations, the amount was returned to me.
It's an interesting story. In terms of construction, could it be realized?
We also fill the floors one by one. Then, every, let's say, 4 floors are joined together with some kind of plate. And then it's like legs in a chair and held firmly in place. This is the first thing that came to mind, was that there would be wind between them. Wouldn't that be a problem? There were some thoughts on this too, and then it became clear that it would be not a problem if the shape is aerodynamically correct. And there was an idea, why not put wind turbines there? But these stations themselves are noisy. The horizontal axis is infrasound, and with the vertical axis, its noise is not unhealthy for humans, but it's still present. The cause of this noise is the conflict of incoming flow and the returning vane. How to avoid it? We put an aerodynamic shield. So, to get rid of the noise, we installed a wind turbine. But at first, we had a small one, 3 or 4 stories high. But how do we go higher? There's no such thing as a 10-story axis. Later, it became clear that we needed the axis to be static. That is, conventional buildings, a static axis like a pipe in a thermal power plant, and the size of 1 floor of these wind turbines, which are like doors to a shopping mall.
So it looks like you're taking materials that are already there. The pipe is like CHP pipe. The blades are just like the doors of a shopping mall. So, in fact, your innovations are in the design and the project. and you use all the materials that are already there, so there's no need to invent something new?
That's right, yes. That is, we use the materials like a puzzle, the same figures, but then put them together in a new way.
Dennis, let's take a small, simple example and see how your technology works.
So, look, we take the most ordinary buildings. Here we see them in the environment. In this case, we have a cross, and in the center we see a wind farm. Here we will have it at full height in one piece, but in the real object it's the size of one floor. We have a fan with a constant airflow. We put the buildings up and we can see how it's accelerated. That tells us that we now have started to concentrate that airflow. Now we're using another building and we're seeing the velocity increase, and what's more important is that we're using a windshield, which of course, in a real facility, we would also have one floor size. It's set up so that it doesn't allow airflow to rest against the blade, which comes back, and we see by how.
How fast it spins.
Yes, but in a real object it's again 5 to 6 meters. But with such an experiment, we can show now that the airflows can be controlled.
I mean, they kind of concentrate on the blade, which goes kind of backwards and everything turns out fast enough. But in reality, how much less rotation will there be?
5 to 6 turns per minute.
What if the bird gets in there?
Well, if you imagine a door in a mall that spins like a wind turbine, the walls are tightly spaced. In physics, you have to let at least 30% of the air flow through. This suggests that we will have some big distances there, a meter or a meter and a half from the building and in the center. There's just no place where someone could get hurt.
So all the birds will stay safe?
Yes, the birds will all stay safe, I guarantee it.
As I understand, everyone can do the same experiment at home.
Yes, if anyone is thinking of doing such an experiment for themselves, it's very simple. Take your mother's needle, make a fan like a catamaran. Use a couple of magazines and a fan, and there you'll get the same effect. And that way you can do real science experiments at home. A science experiment is when something implements some recipe and gets the same result.
Yes, you can try to surprise your relatives and friends.
This is a working prototype, the WETER project. It's designed from the outside environment to demonstrate how wind flows in the street can generate electricity. We can stimulate the situation if the wind were blowing, like how the LEDs would light up. On our website, you can watch a live online broadcast of how this works, especially at night in different cities. Here we have 5 buildings. It's a complex of buildings, not one building. There's a wind turbine rotor in the center, and actually the basic principles are concentrated airflow.
All directions?
Yes, no matter which side the wind blows from. But it's clear that it's better to orient the building under some kind of wind rose, to look for the optimal position. We also have aerodynamic shields here that improve the angle of attack. There will be, in reality, with sensors automated, and they themselves will assess the situation and direct the edge of the blade to the edge of the rotor blade to create maximum torque, the angle. We can also, on the contrary, reduce the wind speed to reduce the load if the wind is too strong, or close them completely if there's a storm or a hurricane, so that it's safe.
So they won't break.
Yes, we have a rotor divided into 2 levels, but in reality, it would be every 3 floors. Let's say if there's no wind from below, on the lower floors, we always have it along the parabola.
That is, we have a few such blocks, or rather, not even a few, but many blocks throughout the building. They work independently. If there's no wind at the bottom, there's definitely wind at the top, and energy continues to be generated.
We can now accelerate airflows, control these airflows, take these airflows from a great height, and make this building.
And even close completely if there's any hurricane or man-made situation.
Yes, smart blades. There's also a patent for smart blades, which allow you to resist all sorts of storms and so on. And if you imagine for a second that if all the buildings in the world were like this, we wouldn't need to use hydrocarbon energy sources.
In general, I like the concept. That is, underneath we have some areas that allow us to produce, work, and live, while above we live and enjoy nature. And on top of that is the buildings that provide almost all the energy for this entire complex.
But there are many other advantages, I can tell you. Any power plant, as a rule, is located remotely from humans. In other words, you still need to deliver electricity, which is a big expense. This infrastructure needs to be monitored and so on. This is why this method is more profitable in many ways.
Where and what other countries do you plan to develop? Where's the most appropriate place for your technology?
We even have a slogan,
Wind is everywhere. That is, anywhere in the world. I'd like to see this technology spread around the world, win the market, because it's an environmentally friendly tech. It's more of a question of placement, the right orientation of the facilities according to the wind rose. These are the main criteria.
In your project, it seems that the building is still a building. The construction process does not change, but you changed the approach to design and the approach to energy usage.
Yes, that's right. It turns out that the building and technology are the same: reinforced concrete slabs, and columns. But the very approach to ecology and to the evolution development of technology, man, nature, it's all changing. New principles are being applied, which we all need.
Dennis, please tell us, in terms of existing cities, how can they be reconstructed using your technology?
Yes, cities need to be reconstructed, not built into new places. Let's imagine a city like a classic city, and let's say it's the city of Delhi in India, where everything is tangled like, a salad or labyrinth. And if we clean up 9 hectares of territory, we keep the road network, but we clean up the infrastructure. On that territory, we'll build 4 levels. And if we can imagine that the new Delhi now uses this technology completely, then it's going to reduce the area we use by 3 to 4 times. So the city area is also important. Those areas that we use today for parking mopeds and cars, or for service stations for these very cars, will be able to give that area back to elephants and trees.
Dubai is the perfect place for the city of the future. Back in the 90s, it was a desert and high-rise buildings, but now it's a city of clean streets and sparkling skyscrapers. A perfect example of this is the Burj Khalifa Tower, the tallest building in the world. It's 828 meters high and has 163 floors, which is also a record. It's 8 times higher than the Egyptian pyramids and 3 times higher than the Moscow City Towers. And you can see the clouds from the windows of the upper floors. The skyscraper has 26,000 glass panels that are always clean, and 12 machines that move on the outside of the building on special rails are responsible for this. Design and green technology are 2 components required of every building under construction in Dubai today. Interestingly, Dubai continues to grow at a phenomenal speed. Construction is happening literally everywhere, and we are noticing it, by the way. Every 5th crane on Earth is located here. Among all cities of the world, Dubai's growth rate is second only to Shanghai, China. The government encourages all kinds of experiments, including the use of 3D printing in construction. Some viewers ask us about investment scheme. It's not exactly clear. You have 26,000 people who brought you money, but the scheme of working with these investors is not quite clear. How can you explain this? It just looks like a pyramid scheme.
Well, we have 26,000 investors, exactly, because we are a very transparent project. The thing is that we have a very supervisory committee, 180 people on it as of now. And every amount invested in our project is registered. Every month we do a report on how the funds are used, and anyone can join the supervisory committee and make sure that it's completely a clear story, and that all of the money goes to the development of this project.
Why not take a simpler route? For example, find a big investor, go to some venture capital funds, acceleration centers, and develop that way.
There was a dialogue with big investors back in 2019 in the city of Moscow, a huge office of an international company. Through long negotiations and research, 2 weeks later I was offered to keep up to 10% of my project, and all the financing, all the work on the project takes this company. I refused. I don't want to give my brainchild to anyone. I can grow it myself.
That's why you went this way. Just to attract investment from a lot of individuals in order to be able to implement your idea?
I could say that I came to this by accident. How did it happen? On the eve of obtaining a patent in the Russian Federation, I started looking for information on how to obtain an international patent that would give protection around the world. It turned out that such a document does not exist, and you have to make a separate application in each country. And this is no small expense. For example, we spent around $27,000 on the patent for a transport and logistics system in the USA. So as of today, we have paid for and filed applications to 75 countries around the world. I set up a company, and I will just call my friends and say, hey, invest here. They try to find out what it was, and I said, later guys, you'll figure it out. That's the real story. But after a month, investors from Belarus and Ukraine showed up, and after 2 or 3 months they came from Vietnam and India. And even in Costa Rica there are investors, and this really surprised me, and now I understand the power of crowdfunding. What a great power that gives you the resources to develop your own project. I understand that we're able to manage with our own strength to implement this very first facility.
What's the minimum entry fee?
$100 is the minimum contribution.
And what does an investor get for $100?
For $100, of course, he's not going to get any gigantic profits, but when he has invested $100, he's already watching the project, and he's already getting news from the project, and he starts discussing it with his friends. And most of the time, he gets a positive reaction to the project. And then he can already invest a larger sum. And all of this gives us an opportunity to continue developing in accordance with our roadmap. And this is how we have until November of 2022 to buy a plot of land.
And start building?
And yes, start building.
Do you have everything ready? Do you have architects, builders, designers?
Yes, look, we already have the financial resources for at least half of the land. By November, we will have an entire plot of land that's $2.5 to $3 million. That's only so much for 3 hectares of beautiful land. I don't know, it's about the same cost, both here and on the coast of Thailand. But we need to get approval from the local authorities because the object is non-standard and so on. Regarding construction and building, of course, we'll engage the development company to implement the project. But in general, I myself was constantly at all construction sites from the age of 15 to 30, and at 15 I was a handyman, to practice in the summer.
And you become obsessed?
Yes, I became obsessed. I got an education in construction, and at the age of 27, I already had 350 employees. It was the largest contracting company in my area. The crisis in 2008 put all of that activity on hold. I could have resumed it, but I didn't, because I realized I wasn't interested.
Now you're in Dubai, you come to Dubai, what does that give you as a project? Why Dubai?
Well, Dubai is known to be the most open region to innovation in the world. It shows the most interest, and in general, it's the center of these events today. It's also surrounded here in the Persian Gulf by countries that see their future primarily through the development of their own territories, new cities, and accordingly through the usage of new technology. And because of that, this is the place where we have shown our technology today. But if my mayor says, "Guys, do it in my city, come here, we will not stand in your way," we'd be happy to do it.
Anywhere else in the world?
Yes, anywhere in the world. Yes, in general, the goal of the project is of course to show a new way, to show there's more of a convenient way to get energy without using hydrocarbon sources. That was the goal from the beginning, and it still is. Well, of course, we will have to live up to the expectations of investors and make sure they have a profit. $8 trillion is the annual turnover of the development market. Let's just say if 10% of developers in 2030 use our technology, we're going to be an incredibly large company that's going to generate good revenue. Is that realistic or not realistic? I think it's very realistic because all of the technology that we use in this building, it actually existed 100 years ago, and there's nothing supernatural there.
What are your plans for 5 to 10 years?
Well, implement is the first object. Show how it works, how it's set up, and start selling licenses for the technology.
So you see your business model developing not in construction, but in license sales?
Yes, by selling licenses for patented technology and also the improvement of the product. What I like most is to put together new puzzles that promise us the most favorable conditions to live in.
Dennis, last question. What advice can you give to new startups to the companies that are just starting out?
Well, the first thing to do when you come to Dubai is to visit our office because we'll give you a lot of information absolutely free, where to start and how quickly you can move forward on this or that question. But in general, guys, you have to keep going. You have to love your goals and you have to do everything to achieve them.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. I wish you good luck. And we'll meet you next time, I guess when you start the construction.
Well, I hope so. Anyway, we're going to go for it and not stop.
Unbelievable fact about Dubai. It was the first emirate to start a ministry of happiness. The Sheikh of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Rashid, believes that people's happiness should be a goal, not just a wish. Happiness is a relative term and it's different for everyone. That's why the ministry polls the population, analyzes the results, and works on different areas. To calculate the index of happiness, they even create an artificial intelligence which anonymously reviews comments in social networks and determines how happy people in Dubai are. To make Dubai's even happier, they are improving the education system, developing infrastructure, introducing electronic systems for easy payments of bills and paperwork, and even introducing social payments for the native population. It's hard to be happy without entertainment too. So the ministry invests in building malls, hotels, and parks. For example, the VR park that we're in right now. The future is definitely in renewable energies, as well as unmanned transportations, robotics, and artificial intelligence. If you want to know more about cities in the future, watch the video on our channel. And we say goodbye to Project WETER and Innovation City Dubai. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and write in the comments if you still have questions about the project.